Hey everyone, welcome to your very own deep dive. You're looking to make some real changes in your life, and you've given us some amazing material from Jim Rohn to work with. So let's get started. It seems like you're drawn to this whole idea of self-improvement, like how small daily actions can lead to big success.
Yeah.
And well, Jim Rohn, he's a motivational speaker who really hits the nail on the head when he says that success isn't about some massive overnight transformation, but about those simple disciplines that you practice every single day. So I'm super excited to unpack all of this with our expert and see what we can uncover just for you.
It's interesting. What really jumps out at me is how Ron kind of reframes success and failure. He says it's not about luck. It's not about some, inherent talent. It's about your daily actions. Success comes from consistently doing those right things, and failure, well, it comes from repeatedly making those wrong choices. So you can almost think of it like building a house.
Oh.
Every brick that you lay, every nail you hammer, it contributes to that final structure. So the same way, every choice that you make every day, it's building the foundation of your future.
So it's like we're not just passive bystanders. We're actively, building our lives brick by brick.
Exactly.
I love that analogy. It's so empowering to think we have that much agency.
Absolutely.
But I'm also thinking he covers 10 disciplines.
He does.
That's a lot.
A lot to digest.
Digest in one go.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't waste any time.
Yeah.
It's a high-intensity crash course in success. It's packed with actionable insights. So think of this deep dive as a way to break down those insights and really make them work for you.
All right, let's jump right in. The first one is attitude. And Ron says that your attitude is like a magnet. It attracts or repels opportunities. And he uses those great examples about how positive and negative people approach the same exact situation, but they get totally different results.
Right. It makes you think, right? It really does. It does. And, what we're talking about here is more than just fleeting feelings. This is about your mindset, choosing to cultivate a positive outlook on things.
Yeah.
So instead of getting bogged down by problems, you can actually train your mind to find solutions and opportunities.
Okay.
But the question is, how do we actually do that?
Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, one technique is to practice what's called reframing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're facing a challenge.
Yeah.
Right? And that little voice in your head pops up and it says, I can't handle this well. Try reframing that thought and say, you know what, this is tough, but I'm going to figure it out. What's that first step I can take?
Oh, that's powerful. Instead of being stuck in the I can't, it's all about finding that first step.
Exactly.
I can see how that small shift in thinking can make such a big difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next on his list is communication. And Ron's really clear that it's about so much more than just talking. He says that listening is absolutely key.
Yeah.
Do you think most people miss that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we often think that communication is about how well we can get our own point across. But truly effective communication, it requires understanding the other person. So that means active listening, asking those clarifying questions and responding with empathy. And this is where it gets personal for you. Think about where communication is crucial in your life, whether it's your career, your relationships, or just navigating everyday situations. Strong communication skills, they're like a superpower.
Absolutely. They can really make or break any interaction.
Totally.
All right, so number 3 on his list is self-discipline. And he compares discipline to a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. And he tells this amazing story about this young man who just had so much potential, but he lacked that discipline.
Right.
And how with focused effort, he completely transformed his life. It's like self-discipline is the key to unlocking our true potential.
It is. It really is. Talent without discipline is like having a Ferrari but never learning how to drive.
I like that.
That story highlights how consistent action can turn your potential into actual results.
Okay.
But self-discipline, it's not always easy, is it?
It can feel like a real uphill battle.
Sometimes it definitely can.
So how do we develop that discipline muscle when we just don't feel motivated,
Well, one of the most effective strategies is building those positive habits. When we turn positive actions into habits, they require less willpower and they become almost automatic.
Okay.
So what's a habit that you would like to develop? Maybe waking up earlier or going for a run each morning. Start small, focus on consistency, and soon enough that discipline will become like second nature.
Okay, I'm taking notes. This is starting to feel more like a roadmap for success, not just a list of ideas.
I love that.
All right, number 4, limiting beliefs. Ron tells this incredible story about a man who was constantly focusing on all the negative stuff.
Oh, sure.
And how that negativity just shaped his entire reality.
Shaped his world.
But once he shifted his mindset, his whole life changed.
Wow.
It's amazing how much power our thoughts actually have.
It's almost like our beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. But the good news is we have the power to change those beliefs. It starts with awareness. Noticing those negative voices in your head. Maybe it's, I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to achieve that. Once you've identified those beliefs, ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have to support this thought? And often you'll find that it's based on fear or past experiences that don't reflect your current capabilities at all.
So it's not about denying those thoughts, but challenging them.
Exactly.
You're putting them on trial.
Yes.
Okay. Time management, we all get the same 24 hours in a day, but Ron so humorously points out how many of us are busy without actually being productive.
So true.
Ouch, I think we've all been there.
We have. It's such a common struggle. But Ron, he offers these simple yet effective strategies. He talks about prioritizing your tasks, eliminating distractions, like turning off those phone notifications, and even scheduling in breaks.
Oh.
We're not machines. It's about finding a rhythm that works for you. So what feels like your biggest time management struggle? Where could you use a little boost?
Oh, for me, it's definitely the distractions. My phone is like a black hole for my attention. I know I could be so much more productive if I could just resist those tempting notifications.
I hear you.
Okay, number 6 on the list is knowledge building, the whole idea of lifelong learning. Ron emphasizes how in our ever-changing world, learning needs to be an ongoing process. And he shares that amazing story about Mr. Schoff and his philosophy of learn to earn.
Yeah.
That one really resonated with me.
Yeah, that story perfectly captures the essence of lifelong learning. It's about viewing knowledge as an investment. The more we learn, the more valuable we become, not just professionally, but in all areas of life. And there's so many avenues for learning that go beyond formal education, books, podcasts, online courses, even just conversations with interesting people. It's about staying curious and feeding your mind.
I love that it's like learning is this giant buffet and we get to choose whatever looks delicious.
I love that analogy.
Okay, number 7 is a bit daunting, finances. Ron says, and this is a quote, "It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep." I think that's a wake-up call for a lot of us, regardless of our income.
It is, but managing your finances doesn't have to be intimidating. Ron is advocating for those simple daily habits that create financial stability. So he suggests, start by tracking your expenses, create a budget consistently, set aside some savings. Those are like the building blocks of financial health.
Okay, so it's not about complex investment strategies or anything like that. It's about those foundational habits I like that makes it feel way more doable.
It does.
Okay, up next is personal development. Ron's message here is that life is all about constant growth and evolution.
It is.
He encourages us to set goals that align with our values and our purpose.
Yeah, personal development is about becoming the best version of ourselves, both internally and externally.
Right.
It's not just about those skills and knowledge, but also about self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and having that growth mindset. It's about identifying those areas where you want to grow and then breaking down those big aspirations into smaller actionable steps.
Yeah.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Okay, I'm starting to see a theme here. Small steps, consistency. It's all about building that momentum.
Absolutely.
All right, now on to number 9, purpose. Ron tells this really poignant story about a man who achieved incredible success, but he was deeply unhappy because he lacked a sense of purpose. It's a powerful reminder that true fulfillment goes beyond those external achievements.
It's about asking yourself, what gets me out of bed in the morning? What gives my life meaning and direction? And, discover your purpose. It may not happen overnight. It's often a journey of exploration and reflection. Ask yourself what truly matters to me. What kind of impact do I want to make on the world? And once you tap into that, aligning your life with that purpose, well, that brings a whole new level of satisfaction.
It's like finding your North Star.
Yes.
That guiding light that helps you navigate through all of life's ups and downs.
I love that.
And finally, we reach number 10, gratitude. Ron highlights just how powerful gratitude can be.
Oh, it is.
It shifts our focus from what we lack to what we already have. And he shares that inspiring story about a woman who found things to be grateful for, even in the midst of incredibly challenging times.
Wow.
It's amazing how gratitude can just completely transform our perspective.
It's like a mental reset button where we take time to appreciate the good in our lives, even those simple everyday joys. It reframes our challenges and helps us to see that bigger picture. And the best part is gratitude is a skill you can cultivate.
I like that.
Ron suggests keeping a gratitude journal, taking time to appreciate those small things and finding the silver lining even in those difficult situations.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, 10 disciplines each with the potential to transform our lives. And I have to say, it's already starting to feel less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking of it as this massive undertaking, It's about incorporating those small, consistent actions into our daily routines.
Exactly. And throughout our conversation, we've really tried to make this about you. So as you've listened to us breaking down each of these disciplines, is there one that stands out?
Yeah.
Is there one that you feel most drawn to right now?
It's amazing how all of these disciplines, they all connect. Like having a positive attitude probably makes it easier to stick with those self-discipline practices. And if you're good at managing your time, you'll have more space for knowledge building and personal development, right?
Absolutely. They're all pieces of the same puzzle. You can't really master one without at least addressing the others.
Yeah.
Ron's approach to success is holistic. It's not just about working harder, but it's about cultivating the right mindset, the skills and the habits that work together.
So it's about creating a life that's in sync with your values and your goals, and then taking that consistent action to actually make it happen.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to go back to attitude for a second. Ron talks about its magnetic power. But how do we actually shift, from a negative to a more positive outlook?
Right.
It's easy to say, be more positive, but how do we actually do it?
Well, remember, our attitudes are shaped by our thoughts, and thankfully we can change our thoughts. One really powerful technique is to practice what's called thought stopping.
Thought stopping.
So when you catch yourself, spiraling into that negativity, literally say the word stop in your mind, and then consciously replace that negative thought with a more positive one or a more empowering one.
So it's like interrupting that negative spiral and then choosing a different path.
Exactly.
I like that. It makes it feel more actionable.
Yeah.
And speaking of actionable, I'm curious about gratitude.
Yeah.
Ron is a huge advocate for it, and honestly, it's something I struggle with. It's so easy to get caught up in what's going wrong.
Right.
But how do we train ourselves to see the good, especially when things are tough?
It's a practice just like anything else.
Yeah.
One powerful technique is to create what's called a gratitude anchor. So think of a specific object or image or even a word that evokes that strong feeling of gratitude for you. Maybe it's a picture of your loved ones or a beautiful sunset, or even just the word thank you. Whenever you're feeling stressed or negative, just focus on that anchor. Let it remind you of all the good in your life.
I love that it's like having a secret weapon against negativity.
It is.
Okay, let's talk about communication for a bit. Ron stresses listening as a core skill.
Yes.
But I think a lot of us are guilty of listening to respond instead of listening to understand.
That's very true.
Any tips for becoming a more present and engaged listener?
One technique is to imagine that you're a journalist interviewing that person.
Oh, okay.
Your job is to gather information and truly understand their perspective. So ask those open-ended questions like, tell me more about this, or what was that experience like for you? And resist the urge to interrupt or offer solutions unless they're specifically asking for advice. Just listen with that genuine curiosity.
Wow, that's a great analogy. It really puts you in that mindset of, wanting to learn and understand.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to self-discipline. Ron makes it clear that it's the key to unlocking our potential.
It is.
But it can be so hard, especially when we're tired or feeling overwhelmed,
Right.
What are some strategies for sticking with those self-discipline practices, even when we just don't feel like it?
One powerful technique is called temptation bundling. So pair something that you enjoy with something that you need to do but often avoid.
Okay.
For example, if you love listening to podcasts but you struggle to exercise, only allow yourself to listen to your favorite podcast while you're working out.
That's genius. You're basically tricking yourself into doing the thing that you need to do.
Exactly.
Okay, I've got to try that now. On to limiting beliefs. We all have those negative voices in our heads telling us we're not good enough or that we'll never reach our goals. How do we silence those inner critics?
Remember that thought-stopping technique we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
It works wonders for limiting beliefs too.
Yeah.
So when that negative thought pops up, challenge it with evidence. For example, if you think I'm not good at public speaking, remind yourself of a time when you gave a presentation and it went well.
So it's about using our past successes as evidence against those limiting beliefs.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, let's tackle time management. We all have the same 24 hours, but some people, they just seem to get so much more done.
Right.
What are their secrets?
It often boils down to planning and prioritization. One technique that I recommend is the Eisenhower matrix. So you divide your tasks into 4 quadrants: urgent and important, not urgent but not important, and not urgent and not important. Focus on those important tasks. First, delegate or eliminate the unimportant ones, and you'll see a huge difference in your productivity.
That's a great visual. It helps you prioritize and make sure you're spending time on the things that really matter.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, what about knowledge building? Ron emphasizes the importance of lifelong learning. But how do we make time for it when life is already so busy?
One strategy is to habit stack. So attach a new learning habit to an existing one, for example. If you always have coffee in the morning, make it a rule to read a few pages of a book or listen to a podcast while you're enjoying your coffee.
So you're basically piggybacking on an existing habit to create a new one.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. I'm starting to see how all these small changes can really add up.
They do.
Okay, on to finances. Ron's advice is simple but powerful. It's not about how much you make, but how much you keep.
Right.
What are some practical tips for getting a handle on our finances?
One of the easiest and most effective methods is the 50-30-20 budget. So you allocate 50% of your income to your needs, 30% to your wants, and 20% to savings and debt repayment. It's a simple framework, but it can make a big difference.
So it's about creating a balanced approach, not just about, scrimping and saving.
Exactly.
I like that.
Oh.
Okay, let's move on to personal development. Ron encourages us to become the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
But that can feel like a pretty daunting task. Where do we even begin?
Start by identifying one area where you feel most drawn to grow. Maybe it's improving your communication skills or learning a new language or developing a specific talent. Once you've chosen that area, break down that big goal into smaller, more manageable steps. And remember, progress over perfection.
So it's about picking one thing and focusing on making that consistent progress.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a small step each day. Okay, that feels much less overwhelming.
It is.
Now on to purpose. Ron tells that powerful story about the man who was successful but unhappy because he lacked a sense of purpose. It really highlights the importance of finding meaning in our lives.
It does.
But discovering our purpose can feel like this elusive, almost mystical quest.
Right.
Any tips for making it a more concrete process?
One helpful technique is to create what's called a purpose statement. So write a concise statement that captures what truly matters to you and the impact that you want to make on the world. And then you can refer back to this statement regularly to keep yourself aligned and motivated.
So it's about putting your purpose into words, making it tangible.
Exactly.
I like that. And finally, we come to gratitude. Ron emphasizes its transformative power.
Always.
But it can be hard to cultivate, especially when we're facing those challenges.
It can.
Do you have any tips for integrating gratitude into our everyday lives?
One practice I recommend is the 3 good things exercise. So each day, take a few minutes to write down 3 things that you're grateful for, no matter how big or small it could be. Anything from a delicious meal to a kind gesture from a stranger. Focusing on the positive really helps to shift our perspective and boost our mood.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, diving deep into each of Ron's 10 disciplines and exploring practical ways to apply them to our own lives. It's like we've been given this toolbox full of powerful instruments, but instead of trying to use them all at once, we're learning to pick the right tool for the job.
That's a great way to put it. And what's so empowering is that Ron emphasizes that compounding effect of those small actions. It's like investing a little bit each day. It adds up to a huge amount over time.
Yes.
Same with personal growth. Those daily disciplines, they create extraordinary results.
So we're not just shaped by what happens to us, we're shaping our own future through those daily choices.
Absolutely.
It's inspiring and a little daunting at the same time.
It is.
One thing that really struck me was Ron's point about purpose and how it connects to all the other disciplines. It's like purpose is the engine, and these disciplines are the fuel that keeps us moving forward.
It's true. And finding your purpose, it's not always this, dramatic revelation. It can be a gradual unfolding as you experiment and explore and pay attention to what truly resonates with you. It's about connecting with your values, your passions, and the impact that you want to make.
It's like a journey of self-discovery.
It is.
And those disciplines help us navigate along the way. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you'd like to leave our listener with? What's the most important takeaway from all of this?
Remember that question we asked earlier? Which one of these 10 disciplines feels most urgent to focus on in your life right now? Choose one, just one, and make a commitment to integrating it into your daily routine. Start small, stay consistent, be patient. Those small actions will compound over time, creating a life that is truly extraordinary.
That is such great advice. It's about taking ownership of our growth one step at a time. And remember, success isn't a destination, it's a journey. Embrace the process, celebrate those small wins, and enjoy the incredible adventure of becoming the best version of yourself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep those positive actions rolling.